All right. Welcome to the panel discussion, empowering coaches to improve student-athlete relationships. My name is Matt French, and we've got the rest of the panel members here in our four quadrants here. I will be the moderator today. And I am one of three co-founders of a company named Sevwins. We're an app that's a mental performance app. It's new in the market, but I'm also a coach. I'm a high school baseball coach out in California. But we couldn't think of a better topic to cover today, and this being Mental Awareness Week and month. But we're here to thank coaches. I think is one of the first things we talk about. But as coaches, we give a lot of time and effort, and we're really about helping improve the lives of athletes and young adults, but also to help mentor them. And during the next 50 minutes, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about outlining strategies that can help coaches better mentor. A lot of us we're already doing a great job today, but we're going to find ways to better mentor. And that's what we do as coaches. We share ideas. So we have an amazing panel today. And we're, like I said before, we're pumped to have the three of you guys on, and they all have different perspectives on coaching. They all come from different backgrounds. They also have different things they work on today. But the bottom line is they're all there to inspire the lives of young adults, and that's awesome. So Chelsea Day, the Ohio State sports psychologist, right?
Absolutely.
Chelsea, it sounds like a cool profession. What got you into being a sports psychologist?
It's the coolest job in the whole world ever. I decided to become a sports psychologist because I was a diver at Miami University and could have desperately used a sports psychologist. I was an injured college athlete. I was a head case, if we start there, confidence, and not a real risk taker, which is terrible for diving. But I also was an injured athlete that suffered an injury in my freshman year that lingered on and ended up ending my diving career, and engaged in a lot of the behaviors that injured athletes stereotypically engage in. And I realized that, hey, there's a field, a profession for this, and there aren't that many people doing it at the time. And athletes don't have good access to it. So that was kind of what pushed me to change that. How do we improve access to not just mental health, but performance services as well for collegiate student athletes particularly? That's my favorite space.
That's great. I mean, you've got to have a mental game to do diving, that's for sure. I can't even do a cannonball. But that's awesome. Thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts. Reggie Hansen, bottom left corner there, at least for me. He was at University of Kentucky basketball star. All you got to do is look up on the web, and you'll see a host of highlight reels on Reggie. Played professional basketball in both the NBA as well as abroad leagues. You also coached at UK and University of Central Florida, and you're now you're an author. You've got a book you just wrote. And you're a life skills coach, right? And so, you're starting to launch this new book, Reggie. What prompted you to write a book?
Actually, it's been out for a year now, but it's still relatively new. You know what? I from playing basketball at Kentucky, I'll put it this way: sports is the best metaphor to teach life lessons. And student athletes, or just athletes in general, learn so many life lessons from playing sports. And when I was at Kentucky, I learned so many things that I felt like I can add value to people's lives, and that I need to share that value. And so, but writing a book was definitely a challenge, because when I first started writing it, you know, you're thinking it's like anything else new. You have doubt, not sure if people are going to buy it, if it's going to add value. But when I thought about my experiences and all the things that I went through and all the things that I learned that has helped me since I graduated from college, I felt like, you know what, I need to do this. And so I started writing a book, and I would write a little bit, you know, put the pen down for a couple of weeks, write a little more, put it down for maybe a month or so. And it kept going like that. So till finally, you know, I pretty much had to check myself. And I pretty much told myself, I was like, Reg, just like, either you're gonna make up your mind and commit to this book, or stop wasting your time. And so, you know, it wasn't a tough decision to commit, because I knew I had some value to add. So from that point on, I started writing every day. And it wasn't about what I learned through the process. It wasn't about how much I wrote each day. I could write a paragraph, I could write a chapter, but the key was writing every day. And before I knew it, the book was finished. And, it's definitely something that I'm very proud of.
You should be. Just the whole process and putting yourself out there. I've ordered the book. It's hopefully being delivered this week, but looking forward to reading it, Reggie. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And to round out our big time Division I school people, we have Martis Moore. You were a track star, did hurdles at USC as a scholar athlete. You're now a sports confidence coach. I love the term, and talking to you, it's an exciting space to be in. You're also an author, but tell us a little bit about your sports confidence coaching and what you're trying to do with your athletes there.
Well, there's a direct relationship between sports confidence and performance. So I try to teach my athletes how to keep their sports performance high so that they can overcome their performance challenges and realize their big talent. So that's mainly what I do for my athletes, is really just give them the confidence to perform at their best.
Awesome. And just to get us kicked off, Martis, really appreciate you being here, and obviously the rest of the group. I want to share a quick study that we did, that Sevens did in the month of April. And it was a survey of coaches, athletes, and parents. And the findings were interesting. So there's two elements. One is on the left side here, is that the top 3 athlete mentors as listed by these athletes were family members, number 1. Number 2, and a very close second, was coaches. The second piece we want to talk about is the goals as coaches. We asked coaches, what are your primary goals? Number 1 was build life skills. By far and away, number 1. Number 2 is improve mental wellness, and a very close third was provide mentorship. All kind of in the same world. But Chelsea, what's your take on these results?
I find these results to be the most exciting thing. I think there's a few things that they show. I think it shows that sport is evolving, that we're starting to understand that athletes are whole people, and we need to recognize them as whole people versus just their performance on the court, the field, whatever the surface of play. I think it also is really indicative of this generation of athletes, from our college folks down, our Gen Zers. And they're a group that really does desire connection. They want to know they're cared about. They want this relationship that is more of a mentorship versus kind of an authoritarian. In my day, you told me to do something and I did it because the authority was there, and that was just where we were. And this is not a generation of athletes that responds well to that. And so what's really cool is sport, in terms of coaches, historically has been kind of seen as coaches, it's my way or the highway. And I don't care what the athletes are needing or changing, but we're really starting to see coaches come around. And it's so awesome to see, not only do they feel that from the athletes, that this mentorship, this relationship, this pushing them really hard in a loving, caring way, they're feeling that from the athletes, but that they're also wanting to do it, and they're not just digging their heels in. And so I just think that it's showing how amazing our coaches are. I coached D3 diving briefly as like a volunteer assistant coach for like a year or 2. Coaching is super not for me. God bless people that coach. I say to our coaches at Ohio State all the time, like, you couldn't pay me enough to do the job these days. But it's really encouraging to see these coaches investing and actually kind of caring and moving along with the times. I think what we're going to see is the ability to pull out performance from athletes that neither the coach or the athlete realized that they were capable of. And that, to me, is just an amazing process.
Can you tell us a little bit about, or talk maybe a little about the character traits, or just the persona of the Gen Zers, you call them? You had some really interesting things you brought up during our prep call about what you're seeing and why the need to change as coaches has come about, and why that's happening.
Yeah, they are, they'll probably be the next hated generation. Millennials were the most hated, not because they were the most hated, but because we could bash them publicly and on social media and stuff. But they're this really cool group of people who I think are going to change the world. They are innovative. They are go-getters. They are entrepreneurs. These are high schoolers who have like business ideas that they're starting. They have this global access. They have more knowledge and information and more access to it than ever before. they can get on their phone and find out something in 2 seconds. My husband and I joke that, you know, it's hard now, but there was like a day where if you were out to dinner and you wondered about something, you had to like wait till you got home and then try to find that information. And even recently, you still had to wait till you got home to Google it. They have it at the tip of their fingers. So one great problem is they know what they need and they're able to articulate it, and they want to be heard and cared for, because they can find information in a second. So they're able to research and think about and what fits for them. And that's really cool. Again, frustrating often, but also just really amazing. They really have this unique identity. They have this curated persona. So millennials found social media and they were like, here's everything all the time. Here's what I'm eating. Here's what I'm doing. Here's where, you know, here's my comforter. And the Gen Z, it's a lot more curated. They're not totally open book. They have this very strong idea of this personal brand and wanting to put out a certain image while also having people care and invest in these deep connections. But they are also the most connected and loneliest group of individuals society has ever seen. So there's all of these really wonderful things about them, but they're also really lonely. They're also, you know, starved for attention and the good kind and connection and wanting this mentorship. Again, I think they're just so cool, but they're also really super frustrating sometimes.
And you talked a little bit about the immediate gratification element too, right? And a lot of it's just based on social media post and reactor. And I think that's probably a big part of it too. Reggie, speaking of the relationships, when you were at UK, you did some cool stuff, right? You did a lot of recruiting, but take us through your concept of building relationships with athletes and their families before, when you're during recruiting, and how that translates to when they get on campus. Because sometimes it's like, okay, I got you, you're on campus. Thanks for coming. Take us through the process.
You know, when you're developing a relationship with a recruit, you're developing probably another 6 or 7 relationships around that recruit. It could be a mother and father that's divorced. It could be his barber, his girlfriend, his best friend, his AU coach, high school coach. So you have a lot of different people that you have to develop and cultivate relationships with in order to just have a relationship with that kid. And so it's very important that you cultivate those relationships and build those relationships authentically, not just for the purpose of saying, you know, I want to do this to get this kid. You know, they got to get to know you, you got to get to know them. And they got to have access to you. They're going to have questions, and you got different questions come from different angles. And sometimes people have different alternatives of why, you know, they're interested in your school. So you have to develop those relationships. So when the kid comes to campus, and let's say you have something going on with the kid, whether it's a mental thing, whether it's a performance thing, and you bring them into the office. And a lot of times when I bring my athletes into the office, my players, basketball was the last thing we talked about, because we practiced, we had individual workouts, we had lifting workouts, we had condition. You could talk basketball all the time. So when I brought them into the office, it was always about how they were doing. How's your mom? How's your girlfriend? How's your best friend? How's the cousin? So you ask them about all those people to let him know that you still care about what goes on around him, because at the end of the day, when he's not with you, those people are still talking to him. And you still, at the same time, you still got to talk to them. You got to reach out to that high school coach, to the barber, or call the best friend and say, you know, how are things going? And let them know that you care. And so at the end of the day, it's very important to let that athlete know that you care about everybody that he cares about, that has his best interest, you know, in order to make him feel comfortable to be able to do the things that you need him to do academically and on the court.
That's great. And that is that how you overcome kind of the notion that some athletes just don't want to open up or share because they're just apprehensive? One, how's it going to impact playing time? B, is I'm just not in a place where I want other people to see my dirty laundry. Is that how you overcome some of that?
Of course, because the thing about it, these athletes, as we all know, some of them come from very disadvantaged backgrounds, and they come from some traumatic situations, and coaches know. And so when you get an athlete on campus, a lot of times they're very, very insecure in themselves. and you got to make them feel comfortable. You got to build that confidence in them to let them know again that you have their best interests and that it's okay to share with me what's going on in your life, because it's going to be just between me and you. It's going to be our conversation. I'm going to try to help you as best we can to get through with whatever it is you're going through, whether it's, anything that happened at home or something that happens, on campus. So you got to be able to break them through them barriers to build that confidence in that relationship between you and the athlete.
It's awesome. I think back to my coaching style, the inside out thing. It's like, how would it feel to be coached by you? And I look back at my style and it's reflective of most of my coaches. I've taken what really worked for me and kind of put my own spice on it. But Martis, like many student athletes, and I don't know how much you want to share on this, but we all had a challenging transition going from high school to college. I know I did. I was brutal with it, but would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience and going from the East Coast to the powerhouse of USC?
Yeah, it was a trip. I was fortunate to win, 4 state hurdle championships in Maryland. And then I was recruited all over the East Coast, but I ended up going to USC and actually walked onto the track team. And boy, was that different. It was pretty painful, actually. Everything was different, the training, my teammates, all of a sudden I was training and competing with Olympians and people who were future Olympians from all over the world. So, it felt like I was a small fish in a big pond, literally with like the top athletes in the world. And so it was pretty intimidating. And I just totally caved under the pressure, and my hurdling just went straight downhill. I was super slow and I completely lost my confidence. So it was really challenging in the beginning. And this is why I'm so passionate about sports confidence in general, because if I had a system back then that could have helped me get out of that funk quicker, I could have definitely used it. And I think a lot of athletes who go to the next level and have these unfamiliar surroundings or new surroundings that are very intimidating or at a higher intensity than what they're used to, or higher profile, it can be very intimidating. And it's so important to be able to have some kind of system to back you up and figure out how to get your confidence back as quick as possible.
How do you roll that into your coaching today? How does that experience impact the way that you coach today?
Well, again, I just realized that sports confidence is so important and that coaches are a big part of that. And so that's why I make sure that I have consistent communication with my athletes, because when you're in consistent communication with them, they feel like you care about them, and it shows that you think that they matter. And that's huge. They want to know that they matter, because when they matter, they trust you. When they feel like that you care about them, they trust you. And when they trust you, they want to perform for you. They want to do their best, not only for themselves, but also for you. And so when you don't communicate with them, they feel like you don't care. Whether they're good or not, people still have these conversations in their head. And if you're not addressing them, they're going to come up with their own conclusions. And a lot of times, it's that feeling of that, well, you don't care about me. And that definitely has a negative impact on their performance, on their confidence, and their overall motivation.
And we'll get back to you with the concept of this consistent language, right? That's something you brought up that can help with that as well. But before we do that, Reggie, at the University of Kentucky, you had some great stories about some of the challenges that you went through and how you changed your mindset to deal with them. Do you mind sharing a couple of those with us?
No problem at all. I'm a very competitive person. So when I got to Kentucky, I'm like any other freshman. I'm nervous, comparing myself to the 6 or 7 McDonald's All-Americans that they already have there. So, but me as a competitor, I was ready for that challenge in that sense. A coach or teammate couldn't put any more pressure on me than I put on myself. And that was one of the biggest things that I had to overcome, is putting so much pressure on myself. I remember when Rick Pitino came to be my coach my junior year, and it was always tell people it was like a nightmare transition from Eddie to Rick. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it in in a physical conditioning way, because we had to really up our level of physical condition. So it was a body shock in terms of what we had to do to get in shape. And so I'd never done that before. And we had to do, I think it was 2 miles in like 12 minutes. And so we had a morning workout and an afternoon workout until we all made it, you know, as a team. And I used to throw up every time before we did those 2 miles. And it's just because I had so much anxiety and put so much pressure on myself to get it done, to get it done right away, you know. And so what I tell you what's so funny is that was Rick's first year with us, and he thought I was on drugs actually. And he sent our strength coach over to talk to me after a workout one day. And I remember this so clearly. Our strength coach is Rock Oliver, great guy, great strength coach. And he was like, he said, talk to me, Reg. He said, you know what? He says, tell me what's going on. He says, we're here to help you. We care about you. I know we're new, but we'll get you some help. So I just started laughing. I said, Rock, man, I said, I've never tried drugs in my life. I said, man, I just built up I had so much anxiety built up before these runs that, you know, it's like I can't sleep sometimes at night because my mind is just so on it. And he was like, he started laughing too. He's like, man, I believe. He said, you know what? He said, you just gotta keep working every day. Just keep pushing yourself further and further every day. You'll get through it. But what I had to do for myself is I had to tell myself that in order for me to get through those 2-mile runs in 12 minutes, I had to tell myself that I could quit anytime I wanted. That's how I got through it. I said to myself, I can give up this scholarship. I can not do these runs, and I can go and do something else in life. But knowing me, deep down, I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to compete at the highest level. So I knew I wanted it. But I used to tell myself that, hey, you can quit if you really want to. And so that's how I got through those runs. And it really helped me get through those runs, knowing the fact that, you know, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. You can give up the scholarship and do something else. But anyways, you know, I got through it, and you know, I think anxiety is a big thing. I think with a lot of athletes, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to compete at the highest level and to be able to play at the highest level. And it's just something that you know, they need to have counseling on how to deal with it and the best ways to approach it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, both you and Martis. Those are tough situations you both work through. And you know, one of the things that I do with our athletes at our high schools, we have them focus on their why, right? Define your why. At the end of the day, it's a choice. And you got to understand your why, your purpose, and drive that will help you stick to your choices. But Reggie, how did that experience, how does that change you as a coach with, you know, when you're UK, UCF, and then also now as you being a life skills coach, how do you use that in everyday life with your clients?
You know, the thing about it is all the things I went through as a player, it helped me to, when I started coaching, it helped me to really relate to the players. And as times changed, I had to relate to the social media thing and all those things outside. But the one thing that really helped me with players when I was coaching them is the fact that when I told them something, in terms of it's something that was challenging for them or hard for them, they couldn't challenge me on it because I've been through it. And one thing about a lot of athletes is the first thing they'll say is, well, you ain't never done this before. Yeah. And so when I would challenge them on whether it's to work harder or improve in all these different areas, there's nothing they could say to me because I had been through it and I've done it all. And so I was able to tell them of all the experiences like the one I have here. I was able to tell them about all the different experiences I had, how I got through it, you know, the tough ones, the ones, you know, it was not just tough experiences, it's you know, good experiences as well. But I told them about all the different experiences I went through in terms of what they're going through and was just able to help them get through it. And that also built a level of trust with them, you know, if I had to get on them a little harder in certain situations.
Great. So Chelsea, we've talked a lot about kind of the challenges that student athletes go through, but I kind of want to see from your perspective what it looks like, how an athlete behaves when things are clicking, when they are confident, and is there a difference between those behaviors and what you're going to get out of them as a coach, as a person? What do you see from from someone that's got real high stability of mental wellness? What do you see?
I think Martis hit on it that, good relationships, good dynamics, confident athletes, they work hard, not for themselves, but for their coaches and their teammates. That when we can get to that sweet spot, those athletes work hard for something way bigger than themselves. I think Reggie hit on the fact that, when they feel invested in or known or related to, that someone's been through it, they also feel heard, known, and motivated. That even if the situation's not exactly the same, if I know that someone's coming from a place of empathy, not sympathy, not hard ass, but from a place of empathy, my guard comes down, and I'm able to tap into that little extra, next gear, because they get it, and they're not probably gonna maybe judge me. I might feel less judged because they get it. So we see both of those things. We see that, again, they're gonna give a little more effort. When that tank is empty, they're gonna find that little bit of extra. That's hard to do just when you're thinking about it. When you're tapped out, it's hard to be like, I think I'm just gonna give a little more. It really takes like this extra from something, usually some type of external factor that lights that fire. They're gonna be able to focus better. I think Martis said it wonderfully, that these athletes are having conversations in their head. And again, we all do this in our relationships, and we have conversations with people that haven't happened. And so if we don't give the feedback, if we don't give the response, if we don't give the encouragement, they're going to make up what they think it is. And most of the time it's critical, it's negative, and it's distracting, because they're having all of these fantasy conversations. So when we find that sweet spot, we see them focus. They're in it. They're not worried about all these conversations that they're fantasizing. They're working hard. They're able to find these extra gears. They feel confident. You can see it in them. And so, I mean, it can be challenging. It's a beautiful dance, but when it comes together, it's really, really powerful.
And it's neat too, because you've got the short-term results, right? But also at the end of the day, it's doing what everybody on this Zoom call is here to do, and that's to help create healthy and happy individuals and go on in life and make a difference. Like Steve Jobs said,
Can I add into some of that?
In your universe. Yeah.
Can I add into what?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Not only, and she's exactly right about the conversations that they're battling with, but they're also battling with the conversations of the people around them telling them, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. So they're battling both sides, what people are trying to tell them what they should do, what things they should do, and what their coaches are trying to get them to do. So they have a three-way battle that they're trying to handle. And it's very difficult. And that's why, that coaches, is very important that they stay connected.
Well, and how about today, strangers on the internet? I can't, when I was at Indiana, I found myself on Twitter one day after a football game, and I told my husband, I need to walk away from my phone. There are 50-year-old men that are tweeting at 19-year-old young men about the trash plays they made, the decisions they made on the field, how they're garbage, they shouldn't show their face on campus. And I was like, I'm going to get myself fired, because I'm about to fire back at these people and be like, hey,
yes,
19-year-old young man, you're an adult man, get it together. And so, we have those other components of people close to them, but they see that stuff, and they have classmates, and they have, strangers in the grocery store saying stuff to some of them. So there's also this fourth layer that's getting in their head.
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
But also people that they don't know, but you can't get those voices out of your head when you're inundated with it all the time.
That's true.
Yeah.
Tough environment for sure. And I think that's where a lot of the confidence comes in. I mean, it's taken me 40 years to increase my confidence, and a lot more than that, actually. But you look back at how unstable you can be at that level, because you really don't even know how to think about confidence within yourself at that point in time. That's why this is so critical. And it's a great parlay into how do we do this as coaches, and what are some tips? And Martis said, obviously a lot of this stuff, everything we've talked about, at the end of the day, it's about relationships and creating trust and creating this environment that athletes know they can be successful in, because they've got a supported network. what are some of the tips and tactics, Martis, that you have and you practice today that help you build these solid relationships with athletes so they are willing to take chances and be out there?
Well, athletes are human beings first. So that's exactly how I treat them. Like Chelsea was saying, that you're working with a whole person. And so that's how I approach my coaching. My first priority, like you said, Matt, is to figure out their why, why they're even playing this sport and why it matters to them. Because once I know that, then that gives me a real good indication as to what their motivations are. And it helps me put that into my coaching so that it's more something that they will relate to and will also react to in a positive way and in a way that will help them perform their best. And like Reggie was saying, like I also try to get to know them outside of sports, find out what their interests are and what's going on in their world. And for me, that's a lot easier to do because I'm oftentimes in one-on-one situations, but even in like a group situation, I make sure that I smile when I greet them so they know that I'm happy to see them. And I also make it a point to memorize people's names. I don't know if you've read the book, How to Win People and Influence Them. Like basically, they talk about how like these subtle little things really do matter and people pay attention to them, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. And when you keep calling someone's name, they know that you care on some level. And that was one of the things that bothered me when I was in college, is that people didn't know my name or didn't know how to pronounce it. And so I took it personal, that they didn't care because I wasn't doing well, and I wasn't an Olympian. And, all these things kind of fester and really have a negative impact on your performance. And then the other thing that I make sure that I always do is I make sure that I acknowledge when they are doing well, or that their effort is really great. I think that is just so important because you want to reinforce that habit and let them know that you noticed and that you care and keep it up.
One thing you talked about too is just how you get information out of athletes. And I sometimes forget to do this too, but you talked about asking open-ended questions. What's the result of open-ended questions with a 19-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, that could go any kind of way. But a lot of times, if you give them an open-ended question where they can't just say yes or no, it forces them, to really ponder the question and think about, what's going on and how this is affecting them. And a lot of times you don't really understand how something is affecting you until you verbalize it. And this is why, being with a sports psychologist or something like that is really important, or even a coach, because a lot of times like feelings and thoughts will start coming out that you didn't even realize were there. So I don't know. I mean, I'm so grateful for people like Chelsea because I actually didn't know they existed when I was first in college. And I definitely ended up using a sports psychologist to help me get over the hump. Because it's just like Reggie was saying, there's just so many levels of people interacting with you and giving you their opinion. And then you got to formulate your own opinion. And all this is like weighing on you and your performance and your ability to perform at a high level.
Yeah, speaking of Chelsea, I mean, a lot of it is just the athletes have to be in a place where they want to share, and when they do share, they're getting value back from sharing that information. Right? It's a win-win. But
yeah, they need to feel like it's like a safe place for them to be vulnerable, and it sounds like definitely Reggie does that with his athletes, or has done that with his athletes. Getting them to trust him and say, hey, look, this is just between me and you. And I think that's so critical nowadays, that coaches make sure that they let people know that it's okay to have feelings and it's not a weakness. When you're able to share your feelings, that means you're willing to get a solution. You're willing to, there's an opportunity for you to find a solution when you reach out to people. And when you just keep it to yourself, like I said before, it just kind of festers and you're not getting a solution. And a lot of times you have like these negative acts that you perform to try to forget it. And the reality is, I heard from a sports psychologist, is that no matter how much you try to forget or ignore a problem, it's still there. So that's why it's critical for coaches to be that listening, that ear, or that safe space for people to actually want to find a solution to their problems.
Very good. Chelsea, I think coaches just by nature, we're never satisfied with where we're at. So our ability to learn, find new ways to handle young adults, new drills, new mental skills, new approaches, new conversations. We're always looking for something new to add to our tool belt. Do you have any tips that will help us become better mentors beyond what we're doing today?
So I've recently become obsessed with the book, The Culture Code. It will be my second favorite book after I get Reggie's and read it. I haven't read it yet. So The Culture Code really has been a game changer for me. I made all of our staff read it in sports psych at Ohio State. It talks about this idea of vulnerability and safety are the two top priorities for creating a good, healthy culture within a team. So I think that's got great tips. That's a big tip. Read that book. Stake in the book, but it's changed my world. It blew my mind. I think really investing in relationships. So, we've gone into more detail about that, but I think the way that we do that is through creative measures. If you haven't watched The Last Dance, you should binge it all today. Just clear your schedule, watch all the episodes. It's incredible. I think the most incredible example for me in terms of the stuff we're talking about today is the Phil Jackson, Dennis Rodman relationship. What a challenging relationship. He came from teams where he was performing well, but was a problem. He was a problem kid. He was the problem kid on the teams. Everyone knew it. And it was because of the relationship with his teammates and with Phil Jackson that he thrived. His talent was always there. He didn't learn new skills. He didn't somehow manifest new abilities when he arrived in Chicago. He had a relationship where they invested in him. They found what he needed. Phil Jackson sent him off to Vegas for 48 hours and was like, hey guys, like this isn't for everyone, but if we want Rodman to perform, we got to do this. And everyone was like, yeah, you're right. Because the whole team was invested in him. They understood what was happening. And he even said, Phil and I had a relationship. He wasn't just my coach. So I think that's a really prime example of the way that, being creative and having individualized relationships with athletes is important. It's always been important. We're just talking about it more now. I think there are good, easy ways to do that. I think that, for many coaches, you have a lot of athletes. If you're coaching 5 kids, that's pretty easy. I mean, if you coach a golf team, it's a little easier. A collegiate golf team has 8-9 kids. It's easier to connect more naturally in one-on-one scenarios. The bigger the team gets, the harder that is because coaches have lives, coaches have other demands on their time. And so I'm a big fan of like shortcuts and trickery and strategies. So I don't know about you Apple users, but on an Android phone, you can schedule text messages. I could sit in my house on a Sunday and schedule through the week messages to different kids saying, hey, what are you reading this week? Or what's the best meal you've had in quarantine this week? Or I can send these little nuggets. I don't have to be thinking about it constantly. I can set aside time to plan for that. I could put calendar alerts so that on Wednesday at 9:30, I get a little alert that's like, hey, follow up with so-and-so about that exam. I don't have to remember it. You don't have to be the keeper of all the information. So there are a lot of these little tips and tricks that you can employ to help build that. I started bullet journaling. I'm a little bit mouthy, and I'm trying not to get myself fired by saying everything I think all the time. And so I've started bullet journaling in a really basic way. But it's allowing me to keep notes on different conversations that I'm having with different people, especially since I'm just holed up in my house. But then I'm able to flip back through that and reflect on my week, and I'm able to follow up on those conversations. Or I've been doing a lot of virtual coffee with people. And I'm able to then follow up and shoot them an email or a text or a tweet and say like, hey, you mentioned this, how's that going? Not because I'm remembering to do that and I have this brilliant mind, but I have this wonderful bullet journal shortcut. And so I think that a lot of this stuff is making people feel seen, making them feel known, and creating easy ways for you to do that. again, it's really intimidating to talk about building these intense relationships with a large number of people. And for particularly high school and collegiate coaches, that roster changes every year. You have a new group coming in that you got to start this all over with. So having strategies to be able to facilitate that and make it easier is going to be important to do that consistently, because the worst thing you can do is start that investment and then you get overwhelmed and burned out and then you stop. And then suddenly now my coach doesn't care about me anymore. What did I do? And those conversations start happening. So I'm such a big fan of tips and hacks and little secret ways to facilitate that.
That's awesome. I mean, it's people skills, right? And coaches are some of the best. You watch them speak in front of an audience, in front of a podium, they're good. And it's because they're speakers. They know, they understand and connect with people. Reggie, anything we missed on some of the tips? You kind of hit it at the beginning, but did we miss anything there?
You know what? Honestly, it's just, if you're a coach, like Chelsea said, on a high school, especially on the college level, you got to have open access all times. You know, when I was coaching, you know, it didn't matter if it was 9 o'clock at night, midnight, or whatever. I had to have my phone on all the time, because your players, obviously players, especially in college, don't sleep a lot. As much as you want them to, they don't. But I've had instances where, you know, one of my players, you know, text me or call me maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock, you know, midnight, because there was something going on. And so they got to have that kind of access to you, to be able to, you know, connect with you whenever, call you whenever. Even if I'm on the road recruiting, no matter what I'm doing, I have to be ready to answer the phone if one of my players need to connect with me and talk with me. So it's just something that you have to do as a coach, is have 24/7 pretty much access for your players.
Just be available. Reggie, I want to go back to the beginning where we showed that quick slide of the survey results. It talked about the number one coach goal is teaching life skills. Now, here's a complete softball, right? So you wrote a book called The 10 Life Lessons. What are the coaches talking about? So if you had to look through and reach out to every coach that took the survey, what are those life lessons they want to teach?
You know, perseverance. That's one thing. Perseverance. You know, fighting through adversity, whether it's individually or whether it's a team. Leadership. You know, all these things, that communication, all these things that it takes to build your team. The preparation, kids need to learn how to prepare, being organized, time management, all these things that have to be handled and handled correctly, especially when they get on the college level. So that's what they're talking about. And I tell you what, another big one that's huge today, what is beginning to be talked about more in terms of just soft skills is emotional intelligence. And I think a lot of these kids need to learn emotional intelligence. And I mean, and adults too, because you got to be able to, when you're having a conversation with someone, you got to be able to have a conversation where when you disagree, there's no anger, there's no tension. You got to be able to figure out what's going on with them, sometimes through their body language. You got to try to figure out, okay, the body language is not right. Let me see what's going on. Not get offended. You know, maybe there's tension in their voice. You got to be able to relate to that and still talk to this person without reacting. You know, and then the body language that you give off, like that I give off. And when I'm going to talk to someone, I got to get off body language that, hey, you can talk to me. You can talk to me about whatever. You know, I'm not going to get angry about what you're getting ready to tell me. You got to be able to relate in those kind of different ways. And the world is so sensitive these days. And I think emotional intelligence is something that everybody needs to learn and get a stronger hold on, so we all can relate and have good conversations without tension.
That's great. And Martis, to build on that too, it comes back to language consistency and making sure that we are talking about the same thing, whether it's with adult to adult or adult to athlete. And you know, the reality is that there are language barriers between a 45-year-old, 50-year-old coach and an 18-year-old high school student or college student. What do you see as the importance of that, of consistent language?
Well, it's probably one of the most powerful tools that we have in sports because it helps free up mental energy and establish clear communication and connection. And that's ultimately what we want to be impactful coaches. It helps the athlete react faster to what you're saying. So when I have consistent language, they don't have to figure out what I'm trying to say to them, what I'm trying to get out of them. And when I repeat the same things over and over again, they actually start to remember. Okay. And more importantly than that, they remember why they're doing what I'm asking and how it helps them become a better player. Because my coaching style overall is very mentally based. So language is everything. And it helps me set an expectation that, look, you're not just here to do everything I say. You're here to actually learn and empower yourself, because I'm not always going to be around. And so by having consistent language, it actually helps them learn faster. And then it also makes me omnipresent, right? Because all the time I hear my athletes say, well, I could actually, when I was dying in the race or something like that, I could hear you screaming in my head, knees up, those kinds of things. Because as you keep repeating these consistent like success commands or other things that you're always teaching them, they really start to remember and it sticks in their mind. And actually it's something that sticks there usually for a good portion of their lives that they can use, even off the field.
I had a coach that used to say in baseball, boot and bare hand. I still hear it every day in my head from his voice for sure.
Yeah. And you know what also too, the consistent language makes them more accountable to figuring out what words their bodies react to the best. So I'm constantly trying to get my athletes to figure out, when you're having these conversations in your head and trying to self-motivate, you need to figure out which ones your body is actually reacting to the best and you're getting the best performance out of. And remember, and then continue to use that language on yourself. Even if it's a different language, it doesn't matter. As long, it doesn't have to be what I say, it's what your body reacts to. And you need to figure that out and then also share that with me so I can use that same exact language when I'm coaching you. So we can both work together to get the best performance that's already, unleash the best performance that's already within you.
It's almost like every waking hour is an opportunity to enhance your skills. Like we as coaches tend to think about the practice time from 2 hours to 4 hours per day, but what about the other 22 to 24 hours that are there where you're creating good habits and building process as an athlete? I mean, it's mental skills, I think, it's the only game skill or gameplay skill that can be practiced every minute of the day. It's just, it's who we are. And I think from a Sevlin standpoint, we're launching our mental performance app. We're in the process of doing that right now, but we're looking at more of a process framework and consistent language that covers your goal setting, your daily assessments and your reflections. And we see this just being an ability to practice that every day as for athletes, and then allow coaches on the back end to be able to see the information and notice trends of athletes. But Chelsea, quick question for you, but how important is it for athletes to practice these skills, these mental skills, not just in practice, but in everyday life?
I mean, let's think about how many times someone misses a free throw in a nail biter situation, and what do we do to fix that? We just have them go to the court and shoot a bunch of free throws. It wasn't the free throw that was the problem, right? There was something going on, whether it was arousal control or confidence or whatever, but we're not necessarily working on that. We might be kind of covertly doing that, but we're not overtly doing that. Or think about the basketball player who has a mini hoop at their house and they're always shooting, or the soccer player who's kicking soccer balls around the yard all the time in their free time. But how much are they sitting down and actually toying around with mental skills and doing it outside of a specific prescribed time? We're passively doing it all the time, but it's the intentional engagement in mental skill building that's helpful. The passive stuff isn't what's going to be helpful in a clutch moment. And so having the facilitated way to actually intentionally engage in these mental and performance strategies is incredibly important, because that's how people practice them. I can't tell you how often I give a student athlete a performance enhancement, mental skills task, and they show up the next week and they're like, oh yeah, I did it that day. And then I just got really busy and I didn't pull that worksheet out of my bag. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we're going to make a whole bunch of progress on this, aren't we? So, I think that we're always trying to find, we should always be trying to find easy ways that athletes can be engaged in an intentional way on a daily basis if we want to see those skills improve.
That's one of the things that I struggle with as a coach. I say the word mental skill, that phrase mental skills, and the high school kids put their head in the sand. It's like, it sounds hard. It's like, no, you're doing this every day. This is just you. It's your character. It's what you have to do every day. You're accountable. Everything Reggie talked about, from accountability to prioritization to adversity, preparing, all those things. Those are mental skills that we all, if we just took a step back to think about, we're doing this every day. Just be a little more intentional with understanding those things as you do them. Is that fair, Reggie? Is that what you think?
Yes, just to piggyback off what Chelsea said, I tell you what kids don't do today that we did back when I was coming up. Is when I went to the court by myself, I was always imagining being in the game. I don't think kids do that these days, because they don't spend a lot of time outside anyways and working on their game necessarily. Most kids are going to work on their game when coach says, okay, go to the gym, do your stuff, if they're not with their coach. But when I used to go to the court, I imagined playing against great players. I imagined, okay, as I'm coming down the court, hitting the winning shot. So you got to imagine doing those things. You got to do it all the time. You got to always have that imagination. Even when you're sitting around in the room, you got to just imagine that, making those shots and finishing those plays or getting that defensive rotation. But at the end of the day, it's you got to put yourself mentally in that position of what it is you're trying to accomplish. But you got to put yourself in that position all the time so you can believe it.
It's funny. I was the kid that used to have an announcer everywhere I went. And the young Matt French from Sacramento, California. It just kind of put yourself in that place and be creative with it. But from a 7 standpoint, we are looking at how do we build structure and consistent language throughout a day and throughout a 7-day cadence. And that looks at the goals, the assessments, and reflections. And so if you were to be able to see how an athlete's mind works by having that information submitted on a daily basis as a coach, Chelsea, how would that change the way you coach? How do you think it would inform the way you coach in general?
Think about, this idea that tracking all of that can be really overwhelming. And how do you dig into that? How do you get them to open up? How do you ask the right questions all the time in the right moment, that they're so used to phones, so used to electronics, that they're really good at being vulnerable in a electronic way. This Gen Z is a group that they're not always the verbal communicators. They're phenomenal at written communication. They're phenomenal at texting and getting their feelings out, sending emails. They're really good at that. And so having a way to facilitate that not only takes some of the burden off of a coach to say, what is your why? That's great, but over all the time, remembering when to incorporate that, or following up on goals that they told you 4 weeks ago. And you're like, they told me, 17 other kids told me that the nice way of having it, they communicate really well in the written way. So it's being communicated in that way, in their own space, which is a more vulnerable, safe space, and in a way that is going to be tracked so that we don't have to rely on recall, or so that we don't have to worry about getting inundated by our own life stuff that pulls us away from it. It's all right there. So I think that's a really important thing, is using not just the language, which is really important, but the modalities that they use. So meeting them where they're at with the technology and the modalities they like and that they're using.
It's interesting, and it does. The goal is to try to spawn conversation, what we call meaningful conversation. And so, Martis, you've had your hands in a lot of different things right now, from especially kind of changing your business model when it comes to the at-home workouts and all that kind of stuff. What are you working on right now that's would be related to the group that you think the audience would want to know about?
Well, I'm excited to be launching a new sports confidence system, the one I wish I had when I was an athlete. It's called the Sports Star Confidence Playbook, and it's a step-by-step program that's designed to help athletes supercharge their sports confidence so that they can win on and off the field. And you can learn more about it at sportsstarconfidence.com.
Nice, nice, good stuff. Reggie, you got this book. It's been out for a year, but you were on your tour, and then everything got shut down, and you're stuck in Tampa.
I'm stuck in sunny Tampa.
Yeah, it's an awful thing. I know. I can tell that. So, anything else up your sleeves right now?
I'm launching my life coaching practice. I'm going to start an online school for self-development. So I got my hands full with those two things. I'm excited about it, and I'm just looking forward to trying to impact more lives, and positively.
That's neat. I think that's what I mean, you guys talking about creating a trusting environment. I'm ready to tell you everything about myself and get feedback on how to be better. You guys are all just like, and then I forget there's a couple hundred more other people online here. So that's wouldn't be good. Reggie, what's the name of your book again? Quick question just came up.
10 Life Lessons Learned as a Student Athlete.
And it can be bought on Amazon.
It can be bought on Amazon. And also, especially back doing my book tour, a lot of people want an autographed copy. So anyone can connect with me on my social media. Just send me a direct message. And, I keep, books here so I can, get autographed copies out. So Amazon or directly connect with me and we can get it done.
That's awesome. Chelsea, you're at The Ohio State. Hopefully you guys are working on some planning for the fall here and we can get things going. But any parting thoughts? If you had to walk away, what's the one thing you got away from, you're taking away from this group?
That coaches are incredible people whose jobs I don't envy, but respect tremendously. That there are a lot of resources available, that right now is a great time to be connecting with people. You've got some great products being launched by two wonderful people. My really only venture right now is teaching my kid to love sports. So you can give her some feedback on her throwing form. But I think just knowing that there's a lot of us out there that are willing to connect. If there are questions, or you want to know how someone did something successfully, or you want a quick tip or a thought, that people are really approachable. And so use the resources around you. Use the resources you find on the internet, whether it's connecting with people or whatever it is. Because coaches, you need to support yourselves in what you're doing and feel fulfilled if you're going to be able to pass that along to the athletes.
Awesome. Shameless plug for Twitter too. I think it's a great resource to connect with people and coaches who want to help other coaches, and obviously sports psychologists are coaches as well in that mix. Reggie, number one takeaway from today?
You know what? Just the fact that everybody realizes that, we need to do something to help these student athletes, and everybody on the panel, the other two great ladies there, they share some great insight on different ways to be able to connect and help these athletes. So I think the great thing was, we were able to discuss different ways to connect and help student athletes and provide more resources.
That's awesome. Martis?
Well, as coaches, we have the privilege and the responsibility really to mentor and mold young people. So I think we have a great opportunity right now. I just really want to challenge you, the coach, to use this extraordinary time to really assess your coaching practice and find ways to incorporate mental wellness into your overall program so that we can all just make a bigger difference together.
That's outstanding. You three are not only just amazing what you do, but you're just really great people. And we feel very fortunate. I know that I feel very fortunate to have gotten the chance to get to know you, and for you taking the time out of your busy lives to find ways to continue to inspire people, including me. So thank you very much for your time. And
can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
And this is for coaches out there. Obviously, we need to help these student athletes, but I think coaches need to do things to help themselves mentally as well. Because coaches are under a lot of stress with with wins and losses, and if coaches is not dealing with what they're going through from a mental standpoint, they can't help the players. So I think coaches definitely need to put themselves in the mix to to get some kind of just some kind of resources that can help them relieve some mental stress that they're going through, so they can be able to help their players better.
It's a great point. Think about what's coming out of your mouth and what you're telling your athletes, and look at yourself in the mirror. My wife has me.
And a lot of times I'm telling them things that I'm telling myself because I need constant reminders too.
That's awesome. Well, you guys have been awesome. Thank you very much. We're a little over time here. For the audience members, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar. But on behalf of Sevlins and the panel here, stay safe, stay healthy, and like Steve Jobs said, go out there and make a ding in the universe. Thank you, guys.